now is 5:36 p.m. This is a special meeting of the Springfield City Council. Madam Clerk, would you please be so kind and call the roll for us?
Councilor Perez,
Present.
present. Councilor Letterman,
Present.
present. Councilor Curran,
Present.
present. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Brown,
Present.
present. Councilor Davila, absent. Councilor Hurst,
Present.
present. Councilor Edwards,
Present.
present. Councilor Allen,
Present.
present. Councilor Govan,
Present.
present. Councilor Fenton, absent. Councilor Whitfield,
Present.
present. Councilor Williams.
Present. Thank you all for joining today's special meeting. Prior to getting started, just a couple housekeeping things. So this is again a special meeting to hear for the first time the continued items that we were not able to hear at our last hearings night. And again, tonight's vote will not be a final vote on this item, but rather a continuance vote so that it will appear on Monday's agenda with the rest of the other items that we did hear. So just to state that for the record. And also, counselors, I just want to let you know too that after talking to Solicitor Payne and Pakula, for the counselors that are absent today, because they obviously, if folks are not able to participate, then they cannot participate in the final vote. But there is a rule called Mullins Rule, which allows for a counselor to hear or watch the taping of the meeting and then actually participate in the vote at the time of the rest of the council. So counselors Davila and Walsh, to my knowledge, will be participate in Monday's meeting. So with no objection to that, we will continue as is and allow them the opportunity to participate later. So I just wanted to state that for the record too. All right, so Madam Clerk, can you please just call the first item before us today?
The first item is a zone change for 797 Berkshire Avenue.
All right, and I believe, I'm not sure if this is ready to be heard. Phil, I'll give you the floor first to speak.
Yes, counselors, I hate to ask this again, but this item I think is I know it's been on the agenda for some time now, but the petitioner is requesting that it be continued until the February hearing. It should be ready to go by then. The plans were submitted to the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission was supposed to hold a meeting on the 25th, but unfortunately they didn't. So he would like to have that reviewed and hopefully approved by the Conservation Commission to address some of the concerns brought up by the neighbors. Just for the counselors' information, I am going to send out a kind of a reminder notice to the abutters, just to remind them that this will be heard on the February hearing. You know, as I indicated, if it's not ready to go in February, then I'm probably going to indicate to the petitioner that we need to kind of start the process over because it has been on the agenda for a while. The only concern I have with that is due to these Zoom meetings, the advertising costs for these meetings are pretty steep, but I do think it's been on the agenda quite a while. So I'm hoping by I think it's the February 28th meeting, this will be ready to be at least heard for the first time.
All right, thank you, Phil, for that. And along with those words, I will now just entertain a motion to continue this item until the hearings meeting in February, at which point we'll take it up. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to continue.
I believe that was motioned by Councilor Govan, if I'm not mistaken. And who was the second?
Second, Councilor Curran.
Seconded by Councilor Curran. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to continue?
On continuing, Councilor Perez,
Yes.
yes. Councilor Letterman,
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Curran.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Walsh, absent. Counselor Brown. Counselor Brown. Away, Counselor Davila. Absent, Counselor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Govan.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Fenton. Absent, Counselor Whitfield. Counselor Whitfield. Away, Counselor Williams.
Yes, Madam Clerk, can I have a vote count, please?
There's only a total of 8.
Okay, so the item has been continued until the next meeting. Thank you, counselors. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item before us?
The next item is for a special permit to operate an adult use marijuana establishment at the property known as 1685 Boston Road.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. And just prior to us hearing testimony, I just do want to say for the record too, it was communicated to me that Counselor Brown will be abstaining from any cannabis-related items. So I just wanted to state that for the record. All right, Madam Clerk, for this particular item, I actually will turn it over to the petitioner to get the presentation for this first.
Good evening, Mr. President. Attorney Brian Shea for the petitioner, DM Springfield.
All right, thank you, Attorney Shea. You have the floor.
Thank you. I have a number of participants here with me tonight, and if I could, I'd like to share my screen.
Sure.
And if you could just confirm for me that you could see our splash page there.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So good evening, Mr. President and members of the City Council. My name is Brian Shea, and I am a local attorney. I have an office in Agawam. I've been working with DM and some of the original petitioners on this project for a significant period of time that goes back more than 2+ years. We have this evening, we're presenting a special permit application which incorporates a retail establishment and also a cultivation establishment at what is known as the former Macy's building in the Eastfield Mall. We were selected for the retail establishment in the latest round 2 for the licensing of cannabis establishments in Springfield. We were selected for a retail establishment. However, we've incorporated into our request for a special permit approval by the City Council that involves cannabis cultivation. And the reason why we've done that, and I'm sure that you may realize that we were a little, I was a little vocal last week in your meeting, and we believe that we're the only qualified applicant in the City of Springfield. So we've requested special permit approval, even though we haven't been selected or invited to negotiate an HCA for cultivation with the City of Springfield. But we believe that we're the only qualified applicant, and in accordance with some of the representations by Attorney Pakula in the audit subcommittee meetings, that in the event the City of Springfield cannot reach or negotiate an HCA with an applicant, they would go on to the next qualified applicant. And we envision the possibility of that happening and incorporating DM Springfield as a ability to obtain a license for the cannabis spatialization. So I'd like to introduce, if I could, Lucelis Hernandez, who is a member of Springfield DM. She's one of the folks that has been involved in this for well over 2 years, and she was an original applicant in round 1 for the City of Springfield's licensing of a retail and cultivation facility at this particular location. And if I could just turn it over to Lucelis.
Please state your name and address for the record. Lucellis, is she around, Attorney Chair?
I don't, let me see her as a participant here. I don't see her on there at the moment. I apologize.
If you wouldn't mind just speaking to her portion, if you could.
Yeah. Sure. So, Ms. Hernandez, again, thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Hernandez is, our minority involved member of the Springfield DM Springfield application. She is from Springfield. She's a business owner in the city of Springfield. She's very, very interested and very enthusiastic about this particular project. She loves the idea of being able to create 300 plus jobs for the city of Springfield. She took the time and sought out the partnership with Springfield DM back about 2 years ago. And they've been working hand in hand for that period of time to move this project to the state that or to the position that we're in now. And again, this is going to be a significant undertaking. And we think it's a perfect opportunity to revitalize the property that's there. It offers tremendous benefits to the city through job creation and through revitalization of the area. And I think that's probably all she would share. If Chris Mitchum is on the phone on the call, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Mitchum.
Please state your name and address for the record.
I don't see Mr. Mitchum on there either, Mr. President. If you would like, I could share Mr. Mitchum's.
Please do.
Thank you. So, DM has been in the cannabis business for a number of years. They are a national known quantity. They have ongoing operations in the state of Oregon, which involve cultivation and retail. They're in the process of opening up 2 new retail locations in Oregon. They're currently opened up their first location in the state of Massachusetts in Worcester as a retail establishment. They have another establishment that has recently opened in the town of Lynn. They run a very small operation in the town of Orange, and they were very drawn to the idea of creating a cultivation facility at the old Macy's building in the city of Springfield. We met with them. They spent a significant amount of time, done just an incredible amount of in-depth analysis, recognizing what it would take to, a project like this. This is not a small undertaking, and it would require a tremendous amount of investment. But they really like it. They like Springfield. Before they had met us, they had actually applied in the first round, and they went as far as buying a building down on Main Street. We're trying to establish a retail facility there. They subsequently met Ms. Hernandez. They formed an agreement, and they decided to move forward with this particular project. As you can see, the idea here is to create a cultivation and retail facility. The investment would be upwards of $35 million, spanning probably about a 4 to 4.5 year period. We create 300 jobs. They have a desire to create these jobs from local residents, Springfield residents. They think it would be a tremendous opportunity for Springfield residents, and with preference, obviously, for Springfield residents. There's also obvious known benefits to this particular project in Eastfield Mall. We know that malls are not what they were 20 or 30 years ago, and there needs to be an influx of capital, some alternative use for this particular project, and this would give an opportunity to preserve that building and that facility, provide an anchor stream of revenue. We reached out through the outreach program. Prior to having our outreach meeting, we met with the 16-acre Civic Association of Pine Point organizations, and they endorsed this. We didn't find any opposition to this project whatsoever. whatsoever. The one thing I did want to clarify, though, is last week there was a comment made, and I don't necessarily remember who made it, but they were the comment was about the possibility that this particular project was too close to residential properties. This particular property sits on an independent 5-acre parcel, and it's well within the 250-foot buffer zone from its surrounding community. And this here is I'm just going to continue, Mr. President, if that's okay.
Sure.
This is a picture of Ms. Hernandez. Again, she's been a Springfield resident for over 20 years. She owns multiple businesses in the city, and she's very enthusiastic about this particular project. We have secured a local, another Springfield resident to help with our security. We were fortunate enough to meet Edwin Azaria. He is a former military security officer, served at some of the highest levels of security for our federal government and as a military member. He's a retired police officer for the city of Springfield. He was injured and shot in the line of duty. We were fortunate enough to secure Mr. Azaria. He's also very enthusiastic about this particular project and is very eager to see this get started. Unfortunately, Mr. Mitchum, I still don't think he's on the call.
Yeah, Brian, I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chris. Could you pick up here and just perhaps fill in some of the gaps that I might have missed?
Mr. Mitchum, if you could just please state your name and address for the record, please.
Of course, Councilor Williams. My name is Chris Mitchum. My address is 74 Grafton Street, Worcester, Massachusetts. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this evening. In this project, I represent the operator with the experience and the capital to get this project off the ground. We're not a big corporate entity. We're a family-owned and operated business. We're lucky to have expanded from Oregon into Massachusetts. We started in Oregon back in 2016. We've got over 6 years of experience in the legal cannabis industry. We have retail shops out in Oregon. We've got 3 in Oregon and 2 in Massachusetts. We're operating in Worcester and Lynn. So far, kind of a fun fact on tax revenues, we've generated $3.8 million in Massachusetts excise taxes to date. We have cultivation set up in Orange, Massachusetts, as well as Oregon. And one of the things that we bring to the table with all this experience is so much pain to develop great SOPs and safety procedures, a lot of trial and error over 6 years to really figure out how to operate a safe and successful cannabis business in the legal industry. We're driven on inclusion. 70% of our staff in Massachusetts meet state diversity requirements. And, we're honored and humbled and fully intend to carry that drive into our Springfield operations as well. So that's a snippet on me and on DM. We're very excited to be here. Thank you so much for your time. Brian, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I think that would conclude our presentation. We're, again, very anxious, very eager. This process has had a number of twists and turns, but we are still married to Springfield. We're very anxious to be doing business in Springfield. And we welcome any questions at this time if anyone has any questions.
All right, thank you, Attorney Shea and guest. At this time, Madam Clerk, I will ask, have we received any testimony for those that are in favor of the special permit?
We have not.
And I will then ask if we have received any opposition to the special permit.
No, we have not.
All right, seeing neither, I will then ask the council body if there are any questions that they might have of the petitioner. Councilor Govan.
Good evening. I don't have any questions. However, this is in my neck of the woods in Ward 8. And I do remember DM Cannabis coming to the Indian Orchard Citizens Council, and the council members and the community were very excited about something happening at the Eastfield Mall. And they didn't have any opposition to this. I think that we submitted a letter of not opposing. And I just thought that, I think the Eastfield Mall is going to die down, and I think this might bring some life to it. And I know that we're not voting today, but I just wanted to make sure that I express my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Govan. Are there any other questions of the petitioner at this time? Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a question first on our process tonight. Are we going to hear an additional presentation from the petitioner for their second permit that's on after this, or is this presentation intended by them to cover both permits?
So,
Yeah, I'll leave that to Attorney Shea.
thank you. So I read the packet that came from the planning department as incorporating both of those into one petition. And so I think that what we shared with you would be duplicative of the other petition, other than, supplanting cultivation for retail or vice versa.
To that point, I think it is still two distinct items. One being obviously for retail, the other being for cultivation, two different special permits. So at the time that we do go to the next item, Attorney Shea, if you want to just say maybe it's just a piece of this or nothing at all, that's fine, but we are going to handle them as two separate.
Okay.
So I guess I have a couple of questions on the retail side. This is the retail portion.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you. So Attorney Shea, thank you for your presentation. A couple of questions on the retail side. How will access to the retail setting be structured? Will there be access only from the main entrance from the parking lot, or would there be access from the mall as well?
I think the original plans would incorporate only access from the parking area, not from the mall.
Excellent. Yeah, that's what I was hoping to hear. And then the other question that I had was relative to the status of a retail setting. And I'll have the same question under cultivation, not necessarily opposed to its setting in a mall, but just curious if you can point to other examples of settings in malls, either in Massachusetts or in other states with legalized cannabis operations.
So I don't actually know of another cultivation facility that would be, or even a retail facility that would be in a mall. It wasn't me, I wouldn't take credit for this, but this idea came up, having observed these dormant buildings, these large box stores that are vacant and just happen to be greater than 100,000 square feet, and being ripe for something like this. And if you look at the property from a market analysis, some of this property could be valued, I'm not saying this particular property, but in other communities, properties could be valued as low as $5 to $10 a square foot. So it's a really great way to get in, obtain a lot of, a lot of space that has incredible infrastructure, right? You have parking, you have, large power supplies coming into these buildings. You have buildings that are built and constructed very well. And that, especially in this particular case, one that's been incredibly well maintained. So when we started this, we were actually approached initially by MSNBC, and they wanted to do a special on this because it was such a novel idea, and it was incredibly, new for cannabis being new, and then recreating or reusing this additional structures, and that never happened, and mostly because of COVID. When we were approached, COVID was just coming on, and they kind of were looking at other stories. But it's a lot of these buildings are in, I think, other communities outside of Springfield and certainly in Massachusetts have seen these. There's not, like, I'm not saying this for the Eastfield Mall, but in other communities, these things will never be revived as a retail space, or certainly never a retail center. So there has to be alternative uses, and this could be one of them. I mean, I think that if it's structured correctly and you protect the public and minors from a facility like this, which can easily be done, I think it's a great reuse for a property like this.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, Mr. President, I just have two more questions. I don't want to monopolize the time.
Sure.
But speaking to that, what is the structure of the agreement with the mall? Will DM be a tenant of the mall? Will the mall retain ownership of the unit, or are you buying that specific part of the mall?
Currently, our agreement with them would be to be a tenant.
Okay. And then my final question for now on the retail side is your proposed hours of operation.
I'll ask Chris if he could.
Yeah, we're going to defer to Springfield city regulations on that. I believe we are at 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. If we can be open later, we're open to that, but we're going to comply with Springfield municipal regulations on that.
So you want to utilize the full breadth of what is allowable, is what you're saying?
I would, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Letterman. Councilor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. President. Thanks, guys, for coming and presenting this to us. I have a couple of questions. So kind of like the first question that Councilor Letterman asked, is there any access to the mall? I know it's not preferred access that you want people coming in from the parking lot, but is there any access to the mall, or is it just a shutdown at that wall kind of thing?
Brian, I can comment if you'd like.
Sure, thank you. Chris.
Yeah, the retail will be parking lot access only. Currently, there's an opening into the mall from the Macy's building. We're going to completely wall that off, so there won't be any access to the mall.
Okay, thank you. And one other question, Mr. President, if I could, and that has to do with odor control. This is an older building, not as old as some of the buildings being used for cultivation or around and about, but how are you dealing with that with an older building to make sure that, what's your odor control plan?
This is another one where I can jump in, Brian. Odor control is surprisingly cheap and easy for cannabis. In our experience, it's a major piece of being able to operate safely and, with low impact on our neighbors in every city in which we operate. We use what are called carbon filters. So they're these big circular cylindrical filters that air passes through, and they're lined with carbon. It completely eliminates the odor, and they're cheap, and it's really easy to add as many as you need based on if you add a chunk, and if you're still experiencing odor, you add another chunk. So odor is a problem that's easily solved, Councilor Allen.
Thank you. So once I'm no scientist, but once you collect the odor in this device, what happens to it then? Does it go somewhere?
So picture a long cylinder, like a fuselage of an airplane, but much skinnier, probably a diameter of 2 or 3 feet, depending on how big we want to go. The air is pumped through one side of the cylinder with a big exhaust fan. So it's pumping in the smelly air, and then the air passes through the cylinder and then filters out the sides of it. And the sides are all perforated with these little holes. And you can see inside the holes, there's like black content in there, and that's the carbon. So the air is coming through this exhaust fan and then passing out of the cylinder through these perforated holes through that carbon membrane. And that's where the odor gets removed.
And thank you. And that's a standard within the marijuana industry, that type of setup.
Yes, sir. It's standard, mass produced to the point where it's super cheap.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Allen. Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the presentation, DM. My question is on the hours were, I think you said 9 to 10, but is it 7 days a week?
Yes, Councilor Whitfield, we'd like to go 7 days a week.
7 days a week. And then you have driven on inclusion, 70% of current employees meet the state diversity requirements. You have a breakdown of that?
I do have a breakdown. I don't have the slide ready to go. Would you like me to email that to you as a follow-up?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be helpful.
I'm taking note on that right now.
Thank you. Those are the only questions I had. I just want to see what that diversity looks like.
Thank you.
I'll get that to you by the end of the day.
Thank you, Chris.
And if Chris, if you could just send that to the entire council or send it to the office, and the office will disperse it out, I'd appreciate that. We can follow up on details after with emails, but Councilor Hurst.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. So it sounds like we can ask questions related to the cultivation facility and we'll just vote on them separately. Is that accurate, Mr. President, or would you like me to wait until we get to that item?
Councilor Hurst, if you could just do retail just for this, because I'm not sure if they want to expound on anything for cultivation. So
Okay, so I don't have any questions regarding retail.
okay, appreciate that, Councilor. All right, are there any other questions from the council at this time? All right, seeing none, is there any further deliberation amongst the council? Councilor Whitfield.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I met with DM a few times. I went to a few of their presentations and they really, really did do a good job and they presented well and they really have the community best interests at heart. So I just wanted to say that I really appreciate their professionalism throughout the process, first round and second round. And that's about it. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Is there any further deliberation? Seeing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion to continue this item.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Allen,
Second.
and seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to continue this item?
I'm continuing the item. Councilor Perez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh? Absent. Councilor Brown? Abstain. Councilor Davila? Absent. Councilor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Govan?
Yeah.
Yes. Councilor Fenton? Absent. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Williams?
Yes, item has been continued until our next regular meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
The next item is for a special permit to operate an adult marijuana establishment for cultivation at the property known as 1685 Boston Road.
All right, Attorney Shea, I'll pass it to you. I'm not sure if you want to expound on anything in the prior presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President, again, and thank you, members of the City Council. I wanted to just, I feel fortunate enough that I have another bite at the apple here, and I just wanted to take advantage of it if I could. Again, I think I clarified, although this is not an ordinary procedure to file a special permit, knowing that one of the things we're looking for is an HCA from the city, which we were not invited to negotiate, at least yet. But I did want to just remind the council, but we filed this in anticipation of, with the possibility that the other applicant may not be qualified. And the city, based upon their solicitation for requests for proposals, they did announce that they would select at least one cultivator for the city of Springfield. And it was that language that really drew us into filing this application. In the first petition petition for a special permit, we did not get an opportunity to hear from Ms. Hernandez, and I would like to take that opportunity now to introduce you to her for those of you who have not met her. Lucella, are you available?
If you could just please state your name and address for the record.
Luiselis Hernandez, 172 North Drive, Isla Meadow.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Hi, good evening. My name is Luiselis Hernandez again. I'm one of the owners, retails and cultivation license at the Eastfield Mall. I'm a proud Latina businesswoman, and I own and operate several successful in Springfield. Please excuse my pronunciation because my English may be difficult to understand, and I'm a little bit nervous, okay? I have been waiting for over 2 years to come before you. Watching the meeting of last week, I'm very frustrated and angry. But I want to thank the City Council for asking tough question and making sure the rule was followed by everyone. I'm grateful. There should never, ever be a double standard. What is fair, and what is right. We have followed every rule and regulation that the city required. This project will create 300 good paying jobs for the residents of Springfield, and especially in our African-American and Latino community. I believe we are the only application that have met the city RFP requirement. Please honor our request and grant us our special permit. Now I would like to introduce my partner, Chris Mitchell. Thank you.
Thanks, Gonzalez. And if we could flip to the next slide, we'd love to give Edwin Arizari a chance to say hi to the council.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hey, good evening, Council. It's Edwin Arizari. I live at 24 Puritan Road, Springfield, Mass.
Thank you. You have the floor.
So I was born, well, not born, but I came to Springfield at 5 years old. I was raised in the city. So I know the city. And I also, like I said, I live inside the city. I went into the Marine Corps for 4 years. I did security forces there while I provided security for the nuclear weapons of the United States. After that, I did 14 years for the Springfield Police Department, and I got retired recently due to an incident at work. I jumped into this program with Paul, and I'm just hopefully get this opportunity to give back to the community like I was for 14 years as a police officer. Thank you.
And then I'll kick it back to you, Brian, to close it out.
Great. So thank you. I just want to, again, thank the City Council for entertaining this, our request for our petition for a special permit. And if there's any questions, we'll be happy to entertain those now.
Thank you, Attorney Shea. Before we get into the questions from councilors, first, let me ask Madam Clerk, have we received any testimony for those in favor of the special permit?
We have not.
I know, Madam Clerk, I know State Rep Carlos Gonzalez signed up to speak for this item. So I'm not sure if he's on the call right now, but if so.
I am. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. I'm here.
All right. If you could just state your name and address for the record, and you would have the floor.
My name is Carlos Gonzalez, State Representative. Live at 44 Dover Street, City of Springfield. And I'm here in support of the petitioners for Eastfield Mall. I've known Lucelis Hernandez as well as Paul and many of the individuals petitioning. I'm fully support because I think Springfield has a great opportunity to be another city of first, a great opportunity for Massachusetts. For too long, many individuals, particularly in the Latino community, African-American community, have been locked up because of the cannabis and the marijuana. And now we can make history by giving the first woman, the first Latina, the first person of color, the first in Massachusetts, the ability to have a grower's license. I think it's long overdue. And I'm ashamed of this state for not putting in place many of the opportunities that should have been provided to folks of color in this industry. But I'm so proud of the city of Springfield. And I think that you guys have a great opportunity here to be the Martin Luther Kings that gives the economic vitality to individuals who have long sought the opportunities at the table, on the table. We can deliver great social services, but until we provide the economic opportunities to provide success to those individuals that can provide jobs and be role models, particularly in the business, this new business, that I'm not a big champion of, the cannabis industry, but I know it's here and it's here to stay. But I'm fully in support of the petition, and hopefully you can entertain the opportunity to be able to provide Massachusetts, the first Latina, to be part of ownership of a grower's license, as well as the city of Springfield to be the city that provides that opportunity. Muchas gracias and thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative, and thank you for joining us this evening. Madam Clerk, if there is no other testimony in favor, I will ask at this time, has there been any in opposition?
No written testimony submitted in opposition.
All right, seeing none, Councilor Hurst, I will give you the floor since I know you wanted to speak on this on the last item.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple questions as we're on the topic of jobs. Can someone from DM speak to what type of jobs are you going to offer, and what are they paying?
Yes, Councilor Hirsch. If we are fortunate enough to be awarded cultivation in addition to retail, the cultivation facility, starting, at the lowest level, we have an introductory level called farm hand. And that's basically when, you jump in entry level, start getting your hands dirty, and learning about the plant, learning about the process, everything that goes into it. And, our opening wages are $15 an hour. And then from there, you move on up. We've got a wage scale and a promotion scale, based on talent, performance. You can move to level 2, level 3, level 4, and then up to a farm supervisor position, farm manager, and then, master grower. So there's a large opportunity for advancement within the farm silo. And then, we have manufacturing on top of that. So typically, at a farm, what we plan to do here is, when the plants come down, they get harvested. But then what do you do with the product? You trim it, convert it into either prepackaged flour or or pre-rolls. And that's where the manufacturing silo of advancement comes in. So entry-level packaging, on and up to assistant manager for the packaging department. So that's cultivation in the manufacturing facility, which we bucket as production, in our internal language. And then on the retail side, we have a similar structure. We've got bud tenders, senior bud tenders, and then we have team leads, and then we've created this, this group of jobs called specialists. So you can specialize in a certain category within the dispensary, whether it be on compliance, on security, on finance, on HR. You can apply yourself towards a specialty and earn the title of, a compliance specialist for the dispensary. And then from there, you can move up to assistant manager or store manager.
Thank you. So I'm really just referring to cultivation. So are the bulk of your 300 jobs that I think I saw there in the previous slide, are they more of the $15 an hour jobs, or is that not the case?
The bulk will be $15 an hour. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And a couple other questions. Are any of the owners from Springfield?
Yes, sir. Louis Ellis is an owner, and she's from Springfield.
Okay. I thought I heard East Long Meadow. Did I not hear that?
She lives in East Line Meadow, Councilor Hurst, but she, owns businesses and for a period of time did live in Springfield.
Okay. And I guess another question: how you have a cultivation facility in Orange? Is that up and running?
No, sir. We're launching that in July this year.
Okay. I guess the only reason why I'm asking is, I'd imagine that there clearly is a demand now, but that seems like a lot of weed production. Is it that necessary to have so many cultivation facilities in the state, or certainly out here in Western Mass?
It's a fair question, for sure. Yeah,
Like a
Councilor
lot.
Hurst. Yeah, the cultivation facility in Orange is very small scale. We have 3,000 square feet of flower. So it's small scale craft cannabis. It was kind of plan B behind this, our plan A of Springfield. We could always use more cultivation space. We had the license and the property for it in Orange. We decided to move forward with it, but it's a very low cost, small scale project.
Got it. Thank you. And just a couple quick questions for Phil, if you'll allow me a few more minutes, Mr. President. Is Phil on the?
Yep, I'm here.
Phil, just a quick question. The planning board, they voted against this. What was?
No.
They voted against the cultivation?
No. Just to be clear, that's the staff analysis doesn't come from the planning board. It's just
I got you.
Staff analysis. The planning board wouldn't hear this.
So who approves and who doesn't approve? You who's the staff? Is that you, Phil?
Yeah, it's me and the other planners. We kind of talk about special permits, and I provide recommendations, just to be clear.
Okay, and so
you're
recommending.
It's not a formal approval or denial. It's a recommendation to the city council.
So your recommendation, and what goes into your recommendation, Phil? Typically, when you're analyzing these special permits.
Well, we look at the appropriateness of the land use surrounding properties. We look at, opposition. So I take a number of mostly land use issues into consideration. In this particular one, I certainly would agree that this is an appropriate land use. The only kind of real reason I had the opposition, it just was not selected as part of the RFP process. So that kind of, at the end of the day, the mall certainly meets the zoning. It actually, in round one, the mall is zoned business A. So in round one, you had to be zoned industrial A to do cultivation. We actually worked to amend the ordinance to allow business A into that area, which would open the door for the mall to come in. So, everything, to me, the land use is appropriate. But again, my recommendation was just based on the fact that, the special permit can get approved, but without the host community agreement, I don't know how that works.
So the host community agreement has very little bearing on what it is we're doing here today as a body on the city council, correct?
Yeah, I would agree. Again, I think there's nothing in the ordinance that would say to the city council, you can't approve a special permit for this location for cultivation.
Okay, and so in your analysis, you felt as though it was necessary to incorporate the HCA, fact that they were not given an HCA, but it has nothing to do with the land use, correct? Which is what we're voting on here as a council, right?
Yeah, although I would say that all the previous, and I'm just going to refer to retail because we haven't done a cultivation. All the previous special permits for retail have included a condition that said you must have your HCA.
Got it. And I guess the only pushback I would have against that, Phil, is that 6 Bricks was getting ready to come before the city council when I was the president of the city council prior to the mayor giving them a host community agreement amendment. So it was definitely going to happen, but for the mayor coming in at the last minute and offering a host community agreement to amendment to that particular company. But neither here nor there, Phil. Just around zoning, the parking lot, Phil, which we touched upon last week for this particular facility. Is the parking lot that is to be included with the cultivation facility, is that within 250 feet of a residence or a residential zone?
No, just so, it's hard to describe without the plan, but the mall is kind of separated into a number of different parcels. So the Macy's building is on its own parcel, and the property line basically goes around the existing building and incorporates the parking lot to the front of the building to the north along Boston Road. The rear of the property, which is the rest of the mall, is actually on a separate property. So the Macy's building itself it's outside of the 200-foot buffer. The parking lot that's incorporated as part of this parcel is to the north of the building. along Boston Road. It doesn't include the parking to the back, but the parking, just as far as number of spaces, the parking in the front has, 200 plus spaces.
So the parking lot for the cultivation facility is not in violation of the 250-foot buffer. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And so the parking lot that we considered previously was in violation of the 250-foot buffer, I believe. And you don't have to answer that. And I know it's not relevant necessarily right now.
Well, I guess I'm not sure what parking lot we're talking about. In round one, it was specifically that the parcel wasn't zoned industrial A, so there was kind of no.
No. I'm not talking about round one. I'm talking about the other cultivation facility that we just dealt with.
Oh, right.
Last week. That parking area was in violation of the 250-foot buffer. It's not here. So I guess my last question to you, Phil, is are any of the dispensaries, did we have a buffer zone for the dispensaries?
Yes.
We did. What was that buffer zone?
For dispensaries, again, it's specifically, you have a 500-foot buffer for the schools, and then you have a 250-foot buffer unless you're 20,000 square feet or more, and then you can.
So did we consider it from the door, or did we include the parking as well in terms of folks being in violation of the buffer zone for every other either dispensary or cultivation facility? Is it from, was the parking included?
Well, dependent on whether or not, in most cases, the parking was on the same site. So
okay,
I did a buffer zone from property line to property line. There was one on Boston Road where you had the building in front and then on a separate parcel, the parking in the back. And we had a conversation about whether that, because that did abut residential district, and we had that conversation, but it was determined that the parking, if the building is on a separate lot that's outside of the 250 feet, the parking did not constitute the quote unquote use.
Okay.
In this particular case, the parking is on the same lot as the Macy's building.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Oh, no, I'm sorry. One last one. Smell. Sorry about that, Mr. President. The smell. I know you mentioned that that there were a number of ways in which you would be able to potentially eliminate the smell if there's an issue. I'm looking at Holyoke just recently, and they were looking to have a moratorium on cultivation facilities for that very reason, for the fact that they couldn't necessarily control the smell. I went out to Denver, and they've been doing this for years prior to us coming out there, and we went to a cultivation facility, and you could smell the smell of weed. They referred to the smell of weed as the smell of money. I'm not 100% sure that the residents here in the city of Springfield would necessarily agree with that or be okay with that. Are you saying that we will not smell any odor from your facility?
I can say that with certainty, Councilor Hurst.
You can say it with certainty.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Can I also comment one, just quickly on the wage question you asked earlier? I think I didn't provide all the context I could have. $15 an hour.
I'm sorry, Chris, if Councilor Hurst will give you the floor.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Absolutely.
Sorry, Mr. President. Just a quick comment. $15 an hour is our starting wage, but we have a wage scale all the way up to $25 an hour. So, although everyone does start at 15, there's lots of room to increase your wages.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Hurst. Now I'll just ask petitioners to please refrain from typing in the chat, and we'll again follow the same routine of councilors giving you the floor if you'd like an opportunity to say something else. Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few questions on the cultivation end. So can one of the representatives from the petitioner speak to how the cultivation portion of the building will be separated from the retail section of the building? How much will be cultivation versus retail?
Yes, Councilor Letterman, I can comment on that. So the city of Springfield allows us to have 2,500 square foot of retail. So we are working within the confines of that regulation. And, we will have the retail floor secluded to this 2,500 square foot area. And we're going to work with city council to see how much additional area we can use as a showroom, potentially to showcase products that's, separate from the retail area, but that's kind of a future conversation. So the cultivation facility will be delineated by a wall with a secure door, with secured access for anyone to move from retail into cultivation.
How large is the total building?
126,000 square feet.
And will the main entrance for those that are working on the cultivation end be the same as the retail setting? Will they enter through retail and then go through the secure door? Will they have separate entrance?
Separate entrance.
Is this multi-leveled?
It is.
Trying to remember Macy's at the Eastfield Mall. It's been closed for a while. Okay, so will cultivation be on the second level?
It'll be combined first and second level.
Okay. And then what will the hours of operation for the cultivation site be? Because I imagine the cultivation site is going to include a lot of, import and export is the wrong term, but you know what I mean, delivery and product leaving. So what will that look like in comparison to retail?
Working within the confines of the regulations, I'd need to review what City of Springfield will allow, but currently the way we operate is we like getting started early at 6 a.m. All the way up through 10 p.m. in some cases. So the longer we can operate cultivation, the better. The plant life cycle, you have 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark when you're in the flower cycle. So a lot of times it's opportune to work within strange 12-hour periods when it's light inside the facility, and different rooms are on different lighting schedules. So a lot of times we'll have like split shifts to just work in the light instead of darkness.
And what's for your cultivation plan? I presume you're going to be supplying your own retail settings that you already have. But and this is actually kind of a general question about cultivation that maybe you can answer. It's not necessarily specific to your plans, but would you also be selling wholesale to other established retailers, or is it mainly that retailers are cultivating for themselves?
Wholesale market is thriving now. Yeah, so we will be wholesaling to other retailers beyond ours. Can
you do that beyond Massachusetts, or does it have to stay within state lines?
Not yet. Once federal legalization comes through in Massachusetts comes up with regulations, then we will be able to export. And that's what we're really excited about, is having, a large footprint on the East Coast to be able to export to other East Coast states.
Okay. And relative to your security plan for cultivation, and it kind of plays into the hours question, and I'll wrap up shortly, Mr. President, but I'm just thinking, the mall has kind of limited retail hours. It's predominantly retail setting. So you're going to have probably large periods of time where you may be, if approved, the only operator at that setting if you're approved for cultivation. I'm assuming you're going to have appropriate security in place as you're going to be, sending product out. Tell me a little bit about how that works and your relationship with local law enforcement.
Yes, sir. Well, that's a great question. Security is critical, and we take it very seriously. We've been through several security vendors in our 6 years. All the major players, and we've settled on one called Vercata, which we're very excited about for a variety of reasons. But primarily excellent access control. And the camera coverage is perfect, and you can access it remotely to see it from wherever you're at. And it's also a modular system that's easy to plug in wherever you find gaps. You can just plug in another camera, another access control module. So that's the nuts and bolts of it. And then, we partner with Edwin Arizari, not only as an outstanding member of the community with crazy experience. He used to guard the nuclear arsenal for the United States, and he's got like top level security clearance. So we partnered with him because we take this so seriously. We wanted an amazing talent leading the charge.
Certainly. My last question is about something a little bit down the line. I definitely think that revitalization of the Eastfield Mall site is essential in whatever form it comes in, as long as it's appropriate. But the Eastfield Mall had previously given a presentation to, I think, the Economic Development Committee of this body that spoke about the interest in partnering with cannabis retail and cultivation, but also presented a vision for sort of a intentional community being established on site at the mall, similar to what is seen in sort of some Boston suburbs, where you have a mix of retail, commercial, dining, and residential units. And I'm very intrigued by that. We have a massive housing shortage at every level in the city of Springfield. There's no doubt that the retail or cultivation at this site would definitely bring dollars into that possible development if successful. But I want to make sure that we are prepared down the line, whether you receive an HCA and permit for cultivation or not. You do already have the retail HCA, and our ordinance speaks to both setbacks from residences and residential zones, as well as the actual existence of residential units within buildings that also house retail and or cultivation. And so if there's going to be residential development down the line at the Eastfield Mall, we need to be prepared to reconcile that, whether it's through a variance or otherwise. So I don't think we have to figure that out today, but that just came to mind when you were awarded the HCA. That was a thought that I had relative to wanting to see that residential development. Myself personally, not thinking in that context that it's inappropriate. I think maybe if there was existing residential, there'd be a question about the residences there, but development of residential down the line, want to make sure we're not closing the door on that and actually seeing it as an aided value to it. So we should just all be cognizant of that as we think about future development in that immediate area.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Mr. Letterman, I don't know if that was a question, but
Excuse me, no, sorry.
It's not a question. It's more of a statement. But like I said, I just want to make sure down the line that we're thinking of that and being prepared to support residential development, regardless of what happens here.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. I know Attorney Shea, I know you have your hand up. Again, I will leave it at the discretion of the councilors with their hands up to offer you the floor. Councilor Allen, you're next in the queue.
Am I up now, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A couple questions for Phil. Phil, there's been a lot of talk tonight about hours, I think there was a speculation that they'd be open till 10. Did we specify it? That seems later than we had specified in the ordinance. Do you know what the general hours we had approved in the ordinance were?
Yeah, I was just looking at those. They only specify marijuana retailers, but it talks about that the hours of operation shall be set by the city council, but in no event shall a marijuana retailer be open between the hours of 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. So you'd have to close at 9 and you'd have to open it after 8 in the morning. So
okay, I thought it was something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't speak to cultivation, so I think that would, it doesn't talk to the cultivation portion.
All right, so I'll leave that one alone for a second, but I just wanted to point that out to the people who mentioned earlier they might be open till 10 or the maximum hours they could. We ought to all be working with those hours that you just stated. And the second question that I have, Phil, is, so this doesn't have an HCA, host community agreement. They talked about why they submitted without an HCA. What would you see, Phil, as I know you didn't approve this when you and the other planners, but what would you see as the process for if we approve a special permit tonight for them, what would then happen?
I actually need to defer. I'm not part of the HCA process, so I honestly don't know how that works. So I would assume ultimately the mayor would have to approve the issuing of an HCA, but I'm really kind of speaking out of turn. I'm not involved in the HCA process.
Well, could I ask then, whatever lawyer is on tonight, is Counselor Pakula on? Attorney Pakula?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor.
Address for the record.
Edward Pakula, 17 Beaumont Street, Springfield, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
So the question, Ed, is to the extent you could, I know this is different than the other processes. We haven't gotten one without an HCA, but if we were to approve this tonight, what would you see the process at that point?
I have no idea. That's, they're at this point, there's no further HCAs being given out. I don't know if this will come up in round 3 or if there'll be any sort of special consideration. But we have an HCA with a different cultivator. And I know the mayor had considered giving up to 2 and decided he only wanted to do 1. In part, I think it's been noted that there's some other communities that feel maybe they've gone overboard. I think the mayor wanted to see, let's get 1 open and see what happens. So I really don't have any answer for that.
Okay, would you suggest, I'm okay with that. I'd rather, just, to just say it as it is, but something's got to happen if we approve this tonight. So, but anyway, thank you for your honesty, and well, I guess we'll figure that out if it gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. And just as a point of reference, all items will be voted on Monday's hearing. Councilor Perez. You're muted. Oh.
Yeah, Councilor Tim had asked a question that I was gonna ask, and I think, as a counselor, that puts us in a binding, because then we are making decision, we're having a complete picture. But in the interim, the other question was, and I think it's from the legal department, and I'm new in this process. For the record, there was never ever with any issue with a buffer when it comes to the city ordinance. And the 200 feet, that was not an issue with this particular cultivation
Not that I
process?
know of. No, I don't believe so. In round one, an issue had come up with the zoning. Originally, the zoning ordinance as passed only allowed cultivation in industrial A.
Okay.
So the mall had first considered, should we seek a zone change for all of the mall to industrial? And then instead, the city council decided, well, let's just change our zoning ordinance to allow for cultivation in more than industrial A. We'll allow it in business A, so then no zone change was needed, and to accommodate this proposer.
Okay, just for my purpose. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
Thank you, Councilor Perez. Are you all set? Okay. Councilor Edwards.
My question is either for Ed or for Phil, and it's related to the issue that's going on in Holyoke with the smell. And as my colleague, Councilor Hurst mentioned, from his trip to the West Coast, he found that smell was an issue. So what is the city's regulatory authority, regardless of what the applicant's statement of smell being cheaply addressed and not going to be an issue? If it does become an issue, what is the city's recourse?
If I may try, Phil, ultimately, all special permits are based on conditions. And, you, as one of the tools in your special permit, can put a condition with regard to odors. And I would defer to the planning department or the building department as to the standards to be put into a special permit as to the measurement of noxious odors. But I would think that some standards would need to be set to be able to take some measurements, probably involving some measurements of smell or odors from various distances, whether it be parts of the mall, which would be a private matter for the mall to consider, or from surrounding properties. But that, to me, is the type of issue that should be dealt with conditions. I don't know, and I'm not familiar with the special permits, if any, that are given in Holyoke. There's many communities that have no zoning requirements on their marijuana. In other words, they're able to do it as of right. There's no need for changing the zoning. There's no need for special permits. But in Springfield, we have two types of regulations. One, the host community agreement, and two, the land use. And we actually have a third, and that is an operating permit under the general ordinances that's issued by the health department. So the health department can also play a role in this, in that the health department is an annual license. And so each year that's renewed, like an entertainment permit, or so if, some other type of annual license. So we are in the process in the health department of going through compliance issues now with the retailers that are open. And I would imagine that we would have special permit conditions, which again can be a code enforcement issue, as well as operating conditions, which would be under the general ordinances, the permit issued by the health department. So those would be the two regulatory controls that we would have. And Phil, if you've got any further info on this, I defer to you.
Oh, there was a condition, whether it needs to be amended or modified, but it specifically says, if approved for the cultivation, that the facility shall fully comply with its odor control plan, providing proper and adequate ventilation. All resulting odors, smoke, vapor, fumes, gas, and or particulate matter from the use shall be effectively confined to the premise or so disposed to avoid any increased air pollution. So again, I don't know whether that needs to be modified, but that was my attempt to put a condition about odor.
My suggestion is that we take a closer look at that odor control plan, see if there's any measurements suggested there, that we would work with the applicant to see if we can have some objective measures so it doesn't just become a subjective issue. And we find some objective way to regulate that's not arbitrary or capricious and fair to everybody.
Thank you.
You, Councilor Edwards. Are there any other questions at this time from Councilor Hurst?
I would just like to defer to Attorney Shea for him to say whatever it is he has on his mind at the moment.
Attorney Shea, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. I just wanted to mention that we recognize as a petitioner that the posture of our application is a little obscure, in the sense that we were not invited to negotiate for an HCA. We don't have any misconception that absent the HCA, we're going to be able to move forward and start building out our cultivation facility. We're doing this simply to be proactive. We feel that we complied with the application for the special permit. It only requires you to request an HCA from the mayor's office. And I did send a letter to the mayor requesting an HCA and explaining why, and not to rehash all of the rationale behind my request, but that's what's required in order to get a special permit. So I think that your action on our special permit is independent of us actually having an HCA at this particular time. And I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't want you to think that we have some misplaced belief that we're going to be in a position to apply for our state licensing or anything else absent the HCA from the city of Springfield.
Thank you, Attorney Shea, and thank you, Councilor Hurst. Are there any other questions at this time from the council? Right, seeing none, are there any further deliberation that the council will have in mind? Also seeing none at this time, I will entertain a motion to continue this item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Hurst, properly seconded by Councilor Whitfield. Madam Clerk, can you please call the vote to continue?
On continuing the 1685 Boston Road cultivation, Councilor Perez?
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Letterman.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Curran.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Brown, abstain. Councilor Davila, absent. Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Edwards.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Govan.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Fenton, absent. Councilor Whitfield.
Yes.
Yes, Councilor Williams.
Yes, Madam Clerk, can I have a vote count?
9.
All right, the item has been continued. Thank you, councilors. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item before us?
The next item is for a special permit to operate an adult use marijuana establishment at the property known as 479 Main Street in Indian Orchard.
All right, is there anyone present to speak to this special permit? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, councilors. My name is Matt Yee, 75 Pearl Street, South Hadley. If I may share my screen, I have a short presentation prepared.
Please.
I am the Chief Operating Officer for Enlight Cannabis Dispensary. We have a proposed site with an HDA for a cannabis retail at 479 Main Street, Indian Orchard. The building was previously a United Bake branch, and with a minimal amount of renovation, it will make a fantastic cannabis retail location, we believe. Our owners and leadership team are all residents of the Pioneer Valley. And as the first certified minority business enterprise, we were the first MBE to open a retail in the Western Massachusetts area. With approval for a special permit, we'll begin construction and move forward with the Cannabis Control Commission's inspection and certification process. I would now like to pass the presentation to Philippe of RLA, our site engineers. And
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello.
Okay, you got it. Sorry, couldn't find the unmute button. Good evening. My name is Philippe Prevo, Levesque Associates from project engineer and vice president. We prepared the special permit tier 3 application for the proposed retail use cannabis facility at 479 Main Street, Indian Orchard. Basically, it's an existing facility located in a commercial plaza, as you can see here on the plan that you're looking at. Basically, they're reusing an existing building. It was formerly a bank. It has a drive-through lane, which is not going to be utilized as a drive-through. But basically, there's very minimal going on from a site standpoint, a site alteration standpoint. It's mainly sort of the renovation and revitalization of the existing commercial building. So as part of the zoning review process, we went through and ensured that we have the adequate setbacks to the residentially zoned properties or residentially zoned uses, public and private school areas. And so basically from a site location, site design, site permitting standpoint, the application has met all the zoning requirements as dictated by the bylaw. So I mean, that's really it from a site design standpoint.
I'd also like to introduce Chris Farley. He is our building engineer from Kuhn Riddle.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Chris Farley. I'm an architect at Kuhn Riddle Architects, 28 Amity Street in Amherst. Well, good evening, Mr. President, and to the city councilors. Thank you for taking the time to take a look at this presentation this evening. Matt, if you could go to that exterior view, exterior image. Thank you. So as Matt said, this is an existing building, and the intent is that we will maintain the exterior envelope of the building. We're going to maintain the exterior materials, the window locations, the main entry, etc. What's shown here is the front entry. We are going to maintain the front door, which is right below the gable in the center of the building. The existing building is brick, and we will maintain that brick. We intend to have it painted a very dark gray or black, as is represented here, and then to apply a finish of natural wood on the front and the side facing the parking lot. As Philippe said, the drive-through lane will be maintained, and the vehicular circulation pattern will be maintained. We plan to maintain the existing ground-mounted monument sign in front of the building, which is not shown here on this drawing, but it's between the building and Main Street. As you can see, there'll be some new signs added to the front of the building. As I said, the existing windows will be maintained, but the intention is that those will be have a security film added to them. And then you can see on the right-hand side here, there's going to be an extension of the existing walk in front of the building that goes around to the side of the building where a new exit door will be installed, so that there'll be one-way circulation into the building through the front and out of the building on the side facing the parking lot. Matt, if you could go to the floor plan. So here's a floor plan of the building. The left-hand side is the side that faces Main Street. More or less in the middle of the building is that existing entry door. Customers will come into an entry and security vestibule. Their credentials will be checked by security there. Then they'll be led into the store proper. There is a queuing line kind of in the middle of the building, which customers will queue in. There are 5 point of sale stations near the top of this plan. That's where all the sales will take place. There's an existing telephone and data room in the upper left-hand corner. In the lower left-hand corner, there will be a new display area that customers can see the offerings of Enlight, and that's where the new exit door will go at the bottom of the screen. Just to the right of that, there's an existing break room, bathroom, restroom, and a janitor closet and some shelving. That is an existing condition that'll be maintained. On the back of the building, there is a delivery entrance and a staff entry. That's where the product would come into the building. And then there's a long vault kind of in the upper right-hand corner of the plan. That's a new space, and that will be the secure location where all product will be stored. That's a very quick overview of the design of the exterior and the interior. I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any, and try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Farley. And before we get into questions, Madam Clerk, once again, I will ask, have we received any testimony for those in favor of the special permit?
We have not.
All right, and I will ask if we received any testimony in the written form for those in opposition.
No, we have not.
I do believe an individual signed up to council office, Mr. Rushing, to speak in opposition of this special permit. Mr. Rushing, if you're on the call, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, James Rushing, 11226 Chantrell, Smartsville, California, 95977. I actually have our counsel here, Valerio Romano, to speak for at this time.
State your name and address for the record.
Hi, Valerio Romano, 167 Washington Street in Norwell, Massachusetts. Hey, Matt, how you doing? I know Matt Yee. I wouldn't say that I'm specifically objecting to this special permit as opposed to the permit application largely as a whole. And this was the forum in which I was invited to speak at it. I'm a co-author of the ballot initiative ending cannabis prohibition in Mass. And I'll be very brief. I'm not going to waste the council's time. And I've cited scores of cannabis facilities, both cultivation, product manufacturing, and dispensing all across Massachusetts, really since 2014. And so I think that what we'd like to do, and listening to the last two presentations, particularly the one before this, I couldn't think of better people to operate this. A 14-year Springfield cop running a cultivation and retailer in Springfield, it couldn't be better. I mean, it's really exciting. But I think that the applicants who participated in the process would like to get a better understanding of how the scoring was worked. I really saw very clearly in the results from the audit that there was actually some sort of deficiency in the scoring that has yet to be resolved. And in fact, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, my client, Origin Sale NE LLC, would have actually been moved up to a position of actually getting a host community agreement. And, I know there's been some discussion over the time of the Maderi case out of Salem. And I actually was one of the attorneys who got their special permit in Salem. Maderi does not stand for the proposition that a municipality has like ultimate discretion to issue HCAs or not. That was based on specific facts about Maderi being properly capitalized and industry experience. Origin does not have the same problems. So I am informed and believe there's at least one city councilor who's interested in figuring out how the scoring process worked. And what I know is that you don't have to have a process, right? If you want to defer to the mayor or the city council or, a particular board or individual in the city that's given the job of issuing host community agreements, certainly do that. But if you have a process, it's got to be fair. And that's sort of the issue that we have here. You have an RFP, and yes, if maybe the RFP was supposed to be sort of a suggestion to the mayor as to who to enter into HCA with, but if the RFP scoring reasonably in question, and not just by a losing applicant, because I've never whined about losing an application. In fact, I wasn't involved with this application, but I did, talk to these guys, and they showed me, some information that I thought, heck, I could speak up and see if we can get this thing verified. So that's really the bottom line is you're going to have an application, just do it fairly. If you're going to have and so the internal audit said there were errors in tallying the scores of applicants during phase 2, resulting in an erroneous score for an applicant who potentially would have been awarded a host community agreement had it not been for the erroneous score. And then the audit response said, the information obtained by the internal auditor to conduct his tally did include supplemental information that was not reviewed by the former employees. As such, it is plausible that an error occurred. So that was response to the audit, said it was plausible that an error occurred. So my only thing that I would encourage, the council to do, and ultimately the mayor's office, because I know it's not this council or this board that's issuing the HCAs, is sort of request, just a few week delay in the final issuance of any local permitting, so that those who, feel like may have some remedies could actually explore what those remedies are. I've been doing this all over the country for, years and years now. And I don't know if Origins is going to file a lawsuit. I would recommend that they don't, frankly. But I would give the time on issuance of the HCAs and particularly special permits until the non-selected applicants can make a proper decision on their remedies, if they have any at all. The information that's publicly available seems to suggest that there's a strong likelihood of differences in the scoring. So that's really the bottom line. I don't oppose Matt Yee and his application, nor the application for it, but just in general, I'd like all the applicants to sort of have a fair shake at the apple. That's a mixed metaphor. That's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Romano, for your testimony there. Thank you. At this time, Madam Clerk, I believe that was the last person signed up for this item. So I will then turn it over to the council for any questions for the petition. Councilor Govan.
Thank you so much, President. I don't have any questions, but again, I do want to talk about Enlight and how they did come before the Indian Orchard Citizens Council and had a good presentation. The council members and the community were supportive of this petition. I understand that there is some confusion or issues like the attorney just spoke about. And I know that we have to deal with that first, but I did want to mention that they did come before the council and that they were positively received. Thank you, President.
Thank you for sharing that, Councilor Govan. Are there any other questions at this time for the petition? Councilor Hurst.
So not necessarily for the petitioner, but maybe for the solicitor. I know at the end of our last meeting, we had a request for the scoring and potentially some of the things that Auditor No used when he arrived at the conclusion that an individual applicant who was supposed to finish in 5th ultimately finished in 7th. And I guess my question for the solicitor is, are we going to have that information in advance of a final vote? And maybe a question that we ought to ponder, Counselor, is to whether we should vote on anything in its final form until we have that information. I was on the audit subcommittee as chair of the audit subcommittee. It was extremely glaring that there were a number of errors in the second round. The idea that we are going to issue 6 host community agreements and you had an individual who was supposed to have finished in 5th, finished in 7th is extremely problematic. That would have meant that the individual who finished in 5th, who we just heard previously, would have finished in 6th, and the individuals who we're hearing now would have finished in 7th. Therefore, they would have been outside of the range of individual applicants receiving a host community agreement. I don't know how relevant that is right now as we entertain this special permit, but it seems to me that it ought to have some sort of bearing on what it is we do, considering that there are only so many special permits that we can hand out. And, if this particular individual, if we give it to this particular individual, the question is, will we prejudice in any way that individual who finished in 7th, who should have finished in 5th, and then the other question is, will there even be another round, which I think is also up in the air. So I think there are a number of questions that we probably ought to get answered. Certainly don't mind continuing this item, but there's a lot out there that I think has remained unanswered.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. Are there any other questions at this time or comments for the petitioner? Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Councilor Hurst beat me to it. I was going to repeat the request relative to the rubric and the scoring, which I have not yet received, but I have received information that it is in the works. Definitely do need it in advance of Monday's meeting. And I think it's fair to point out, right now we're discussing special permit approval, as opposed to HCA approval, but there is still some considerations to be made in regards to both. So it would be very helpful if we could get that sort of well in advance of Monday's meeting, so we have time to review it and follow up with any questions ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. And Attorney Pakula, just to this point, what is the likelihood that that's possible prior to Monday's meeting, if you are involved in that effort?
I'm not sure. I had invited Attorney Steve Roach, and I see he is on here. He is in charge of our public records unit. And I did see that he had requested information from our internal auditor. And I understand that was delivered today. And Councilor Letterman, I did receive your email looking for the rubric, and I can't remember what the other thing was, but again, I just forwarded that to Attorney Roach for him to deal with. He can probably give us some estimate as to a timeline of how that becomes available. I do think, though, that the issue of whether or not there was some error is irrelevant to the issue of the land use and the special permits. In particular, when we're discussing issuing special permits, regardless of whether there's an HCA. So it really doesn't make any sense to hold up a special permit if you're not going to hold up a special permit because there's no HCA. My suggestion is that financially, it would be unsound to hold that up because it's just going to cause a delay in revenues for the city. I know that all of these businesses are that are up and running so far are thriving. I do believe the mayor has a concern as to whether and how many more will continue to thrive. But Springfield seems to be a very lucrative market. And there seems to be a lot of interest, and it's a little bit of competition going on here and jockeying as to how best to get up and operating. And I don't think litigation, I would agree with my brother there, is the best way to get up and operating in any of these circumstances and with the facts that we have here. That being said, I would like to have Attorney Roach comment to the status of the request.
Please state your name and address for the record, attorney, please.
Yes, Stephen Roach, 35 Willow Street, Springfield, Mass.
Thank you.
And so just to be very brief on this, we have so many applications, we have so many public records requests around this process and these applications. Remember, we have 25 filed applications, which are all being worked through. The information the city solicitor mentioned just came to my office later today. And so we have to go through that. I've reviewed a number of documents, but we do have to comply with state statute with regards to items that are to be withheld under the public records law. So we always have to review everything. We just can't give it out and make redactions where required by state law. So as I said, I will have a better idea of when we can get the scoring is separate from the rubric, is separate from the whole application process. And so we're really have two people working on this right now, trying to get through this stuff. I didn't realize you'd be looking for it this quickly. We are very much involved in this, and we have people who are on the screen today who are looking for other records too around this process. So there's no, I understand now that there's a desire to do that. I will talk with the city solicitor tomorrow and see what we can do to kick these things through sooner than later.
All right, thank you, Attorney Roach. Can I just ask, Valerio Romano, can you please identify yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm sorry, I thought I did. I've been asked.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I've been asked by Origin Sale New England LLC to help chime in. And just,
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Morano, I'm sorry. I was giving you the floor. I just wanted you to identify yourself. We have to keep the program moving, but I appreciate it. Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve, that is appreciated. But I think we also will, I'm picking up some of the language that's being used, and I'm going to say that I think we're probably going to have a conversation about what you are actually going to be willing to release to counselors in their individual capacity, because you're using the term public records request. Let me be clear that I'm not submitting a public records request. I've made a request of the administration through you and Solicitor Pakula to provide me with the information that you can in regards to our consideration currently and future consideration of HCAs. And I want to see everything that I am legally entitled to see as an individual elected counselor. And I guess I have to say now, I would like to know what individually elected counselors are not legally permitted to see. And if that is the case, what steps need to be taken by the council body as the separate and co-equal member of government to either subpoena or review those documents in executive session? Because I can appreciate that the HCA RFP deals with state procurement law, and that's like a whole other area. I'm not an attorney, So I know that, you know, the state procurement law does limit what can be viewed from, you know, how things are awarded out of procurement. But, you know, it's important to me as we prepare for future considerations of the HCA, separate and aside from the special permits, to get an idea of what everything is looking like and have a full picture of our process. So we may need to probably move that into a discussion between you and I, Solicitor Pakula, and not play it out in the special permit hearing. But I just want to get an understanding of what's going to be released and what might need more formal mechanisms, if that makes sense.
Thank you,
Very
Councilor
good.
Letterman.
If I may, I was just going to say again, you know, we just received access to a number of the documents that are on the auditor's hard drive, shared drive, whatever they call it at City Hall. So, you know, that's something that we're going to look at starting tomorrow. And you and I can have a conversation, you know, Thursday, and just try to give you a heads up on that if that's the appropriate way to go.
Thank you, Steve. Always appreciate your work.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. At this time, Councilor Whitfield and folks, I just want to say we do have a specific special permit that we just want to make sure that folks are asking questions specific of that entity. So I know there's a lot of process questions emerging, but I just wanted to mention that we do have folks on the stand representing a sole entity.
Sorry, Mr. President, this is process. It's gonna be quick. So I kind of agree with Councilor Letterman was saying. Well, I do agree, not kind of, I agree what he was saying, as far as maybe going into executive session so we can go over some of this information. So Mr. President, if that's something that we need to do or we can do, can we get that done prior to Monday's meeting? In addition, I don't know, Mr. President, just for asking. And then my question is, one of the things that Councilor Letterman asked for at the last meeting was the scoring document. And I don't think some of the information or the documents requested are that hard to deliver. There's no information on the organizations on the scoring document, and he did just ask for the scoring requirement. And I don't think every single piece of information has to be delivered at the same time. And so for the information that don't have like information that has to be redacted and things like that, can those pieces of information be submitted? Because the scoring document is just a document. I mean, I still have it. So, I mean, I can share it if you all don't want to, but is that something that can just be submitted?
I'll allow Attorney Pakula or
Yeah, if I may, Counselor, I think you make a very good point, and that is, I don't think that anyone wants to just wait and you know, until we have everything ready to release in all of these requests. I think that for sure there should be a phased rollout of what's been requested, and I apologize that I have not been able to expedite this. I don't see the need to have that to vote on a special permit. I think it's irrelevant. It doesn't go to any of the factors of whether a special permit should be granted or denied. And as I said, I don't see any need to hold anyone up on getting a special permit. But as Steve said, we can look to see what do we have on hand right now that we can turn over tomorrow, and we will do that.
Thank you. That's all that's requested. I don't think that, for me, it wasn't like holding up the special permit. For me, it was just like, let's get the information that we can out to the council so that we can review things in advance, and then as it come along, we have more time to review. So we're not getting everything at once, and then we have to hurry up and review it all. It just makes it a better process to get us what you can. But you know, I don't see it holding up a special permit, because as we all know, the mayor can choose whatever organizations he want to move forward with the HCA agreement, which he chose to do. So thank you, Attorney.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Are there any questions for the petitioner specific to their project? Councilor Hurst? You're muted, Councilor Hurst.
I'm sorry, it's not directly to the petitioner, but I guess I would argue that if we don't have the best qualified candidates before us from the selection community or from the selection committee, then, you know, we don't know who might, I'm sorry, if we don't have the best qualified candidates before us from the selection committee, it would seem to me that by approving someone who is less than desirable, it might have an adverse impact on the community at large, right? We want them to have the best operators who would in turn bring in the most revenue. And so I guess I would argue and certainly will put something together for the next meeting that, you know, it does have a significant impact, and it is necessary for us to know why a particular individual was scored the way in which they were scored and why a particular operator was left out. We have an obligation to make sure that the city of Springfield does indeed have the best operators here in the city. And, you know, if something went wrong in the scoring process, for me, that's going to have an adverse impact on the community because we're not going to get the best qualified applicants that we could possibly have in this round. So I think it's relevant.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. Councilor Whitfield.
I'll be brief again, Mr. President. I just want to make it clear that the selection committee did not select any of these applicants. The mayor can go down the list and choose number 17 out of 25 if he wants to, no matter what we score. So I just want to put that out there. We gave scores based on each individual's opinion of who had the best applications. And so I just wanted to put out there that we did not select anyone. We didn't give the mayor recommended list. We gave him the scores and the mayor chose. And it's up to the mayor to select who's going to get the host community agreement. So we do need to look at the permit via the permitting process. And, you know, because I just want to put out there that some folks that got chosen had very low scores in the process, and we don't want to, we just want to do our due diligence and do what we're supposed to do as a council and look at the facts that's presented to us from the folks that's getting the permit and not really go by the selection, because regardless, the mayor can select who he wants. And when those applicants come up, I will say how I was surprised how they were selected because they did score low, but we have to do our due diligence as is presented to us when we give out the permit. So we can't really go by 100% by the scoring process. While I understand what you're saying, Councilor Hurst, I don't know that that's our specific role. Like, we have to go by what is presented to us, because regardless, the mayor can select any organization that he wants. And that would be something that he has to deal with when he's going through that selection process.
Thank you, Councilor Whitfield. Councilor Hurst.
Just a quick question, and maybe the solicitor can answer it. Did the mayor follow the scores of the selection team? I mean, did he? My understanding was that everything that I heard him say publicly was that he followed the order of the selection committee, and that was what he was doing in terms of awarding host community agreements. And so my thought was that everybody was ranked and received a specific score, and then the mayor went and, you know, awarded them based off of the scores that they received, and the highest, the people who scored the highest, you know, if he was going to approve 4, the 4 highest would get it. If he was going to approve 6, the 6 highest would get it. I didn't quite realize that I didn't have that understanding that the mayor was going to pick and choose regardless of the order. My thought was that he was going in order. Is that not the case, solicitor?
As far as I know, he picked the highest scorers.
The highest scorers. That's what I thought. Okay. All right. That came from the selection committee.
That is my understanding.
Okay. So if there is an issue in terms of the scoring, I think it's extremely relevant because we had some very qualified individuals, including Councilor Whitfield, as part of the selection committee. And you know, if everything is above board and transparent, it would seem to me that we would go based off of where individuals scored. And if there was an error in scoring, then you know that not only is it problematic, I'd like to know how that's going to be rectified prior to me voting on anything, preferably.
Well, your logic falls apart when you consider the fact that there is no factor being considered for the other applicant, DM, as to whether they even have a host community agreement. So regardless of who gets a host community agreement, your task is to evaluate the special permit. And I would suggest that if you consider factors beyond what you can require for a special permit, we're likely facing a situation that someone can be called, you're arbitrarily and capriciously not dealing with the criteria you're supposed to be following under Chapter 40A and our zoning ordinance for special permits.
So my problem, Solicitor, is that there's no recourse, right? The same way there's no recourse for the mayor picking and choosing who it is that he wants. There's the only recourse that we have is here. And so while I hear where you're coming from, if the mayor's selection is arbitrary and capricious, we're subjecting ourselves to just as many lawsuits.
I'm gonna
disagree.
Attorney Pakula, I'm sorry. I'm gonna end the portion on the process, as we do have a petitioner here waiting to hear questions directly tied to their project. So I'm really going to just gear that towards counselors who have questions for the petitioner at this time. Councilor Whitfield, is your question for the petitioner? I'm sorry. We can certainly have this conversation, y'all, in a continued meeting outside of this. But are there any counselors at this time that have specific questions related to the project?
Mr. President, I was just trying to clear up the process because I agree with Councilor Hurst, there need to be recourse, but I was just trying to clear up the process as I know it. That's it.
I'm happy. We can certainly schedule a subcommittee meeting or audit through Audit General Government seriously to hash that out or discuss that further and invite Attorney Pakula. But I know these folks are waiting, and I want to be cautious of that. So are there any questions from the council at this time for the petitioner? Councilor Letterman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the petitioner for their patience and their willingness to present this evening. And just one question is, that particular location is in a plaza with a number of other businesses. I'm just wondering if the petitioner has engaged with those other businesses and sought support or quelled any concerns that might exist from the established businesses in that plaza.
We haven't heard any complaints or approval from the surrounding businesses, but in our meetings with the IOCC, the community was really looking forward to our presence there in that plaza, occupying that bank that's been vacant for quite a while. And as we begin operations, how we can collaborate with surrounding businesses and even in the greater Indian Orchard area is a high priority for us at Enlight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. Are there any other questions at this time for the petitioner? Seeing none, is there any further deliberation amongst the council? Also seeing none at this moment, I will entertain a motion to continue the item.
Make the motion to continue.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Whitfield and properly seconded by Councilor Perez. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll to continue?
I'm continuing the item. Councilor Perez?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Letterman?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Curran?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Walsh? Absent. Councilor Brown? Abstain. Councilor Davila? Absent. Councilor Hurst?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Govan?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Fenton? Absent. Councilor Whitfield?
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Williams?
Yes, the item has been continued. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before the council at this time?
There is not.
Great, counselors and guests, thank you for joining and thank you for your patience as we all grapple with this new industry and processes that emerge from such. Counselors, Monday, unless there are other subcommittee meetings that happen in between. But I wish you all well and have a blessed night.
ARPA meeting Thursday, 4:45.
Look forward to that.
Have a good night. Good night.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.